There's a reason you've never quite fit in, a reason you've always felt like you were on the outside looking in, even when everything on the surface seemed fine. If you were born between 1955 and 1975, this isn't just a personality quirk or a phase. It's a spiritual signal, a deeper calling. You weren't made to follow the crowd, you were born to awaken it. This isn't random. It's part of a prophetic message tied to end times prophecy, biblical signs, and your unique spiritual identity. This generation, your generation, is what many call the chosen generation, prophetic, intuitive, and deeply connected to things most people ignore. While others were chasing status, you were sensing something else stirring beneath the surface of life. You've had moments, maybe quiet, maybe loud, where you thought, "Why do I feel different?" And that feeling never left, did it? That's because it wasn't meant to. It was divine timing nudging you toward your spiritual mission. You're not too sensitive, you're tuned in, you're not out of place, you're ahead of your time. A lightworker, a starseed, an old soul with spiritual gifts waiting to be fully activated. This video is going to connect all the dots, from your past questions to your current awakening in 2025. You'll understand the signs you are chosen, your life purpose, and God's plan for your journey. Once the message is clear, you'll finally understand why your whole life has felt like a preparation for something bigger. Back in the day, growing up between 1955 and 1975 wasn't just about bell-bottoms, vinyl records, or rotary phones. For those with a spiritual calling, childhood felt heavier, like carrying a backpack full of questions no one else seemed to ask. They didn't have the words for spiritual awakening or star seeds, but they felt it. Deep inside, they sensed they didn't belong in the same way others did. And when they asked questions like, "What's the point of all this?" the answers always felt too shallow to satisfy the hunger in their soul. These kids, now adults, often felt misunderstood by their families, teachers, even friends. While others focused on fitting in, they were searching for meaning. Maybe you remember lying awake at night, thinking about life, death, God, the stars, while everyone else seemed focused on grades or gossip. That wasn't anxiety. That was the early spark of your spiritual gifts, nudging you toward your true purpose. You weren't just a deep thinker, you were being prepared. And because no one else seemed to understand, you carried this in silence. They say, God is calling you. But back then, it felt more like a whisper in a noisy world. You didn't know you were part of a prophetic generation. You just knew something was different. And it was. That discomfort, that spiritual identity quietly forming beneath the surface, it was all part of God's plan. And if you've made it this far still asking why you've always felt this way, just wait, because the signs are about to become unmistakably clear. You weren't born into just any time, you were born into a window of divine timing. The generation born between 1955 and 1975 carries a spiritual blueprint, one that aligns with biblical prophecy and the signs of the end times. While the world around you was focused on politics, economics, and survival, something deeper was unfolding. You were born into a spiritual war zone, and whether you knew it or not, you were drafted from birth. Your soul came equipped for this moment, long before the phrase Awakening 2025 meant anything to anyone. This is why many in your generation are suddenly waking up, after decades of feeling off track, exhausted, or even lost. It's no coincidence that this inner stirring is becoming louder now. You've likely noticed it. Vivid dreams, emotional breakthroughs, sudden insights, or a hunger for answers no one in your circle seems to talk about. That's not midlife crisis, it's spiritual transformation. The veil is thinning, and what you're experiencing is the activation of your spiritual gifts, designed to fulfill your life purpose during this critical time. God doesn't make mistakes, He chooses. And if you're still breathing, He's not finished with you yet. This isn't just about you, it's about the light you're meant to carry into a darkening world. This chosen generation is rising, not to preach religion, but to live out truth, love, and power. And while some still doubt or sleep, others, like you, are receiving spiritual messages loud and clear. Oh, and if this is resonating so far, you might want to tap that like button or subscribe, just in case this message keeps unfolding the way I think it will. The inner conflict between the world system and God's calling. From early adulthood, many born between 1955 and 1975 found themselves torn. On one hand, society said, get the job, chase success, stay in line. But on the other, there was this persistent feeling that none of it quite fit. Climbing the ladder didn't satisfy. Settling down didn't bring peace. That's because you weren't meant to conform. You were meant to transform. While others thrived in the system, you were built to challenge it. That restlessness you felt, that was God's way of keeping you from getting too comfortable. This tug of war between worldly expectations and divine purpose has followed you for years. Maybe you tried different careers, joined churches, started over more times than you can count. You've probably asked, why does nothing feel right for long? But what if that dissatisfaction wasn't failure? It was spiritual redirection. Lightworkers and old souls often wrestle with this. Their journey isn't about fitting in, it's about clearing a path for others. If you felt like you were always rebuilding, that's because you were never meant to build on someone else's foundation. You're here to build something higher. That's why the spiritual identity inside you keeps resisting the world's mold. You've likely noticed you can't ignore injustice, you feel energy in a room, and you're drawn to things others dismiss, like prophetic messages, Christian prophecy, or signs of the end times. That sensitivity isn't weakness, it's part of your spiritual armor. And the deeper you step into your faith journey, the clearer your life purpose becomes. But it doesn't stop there, because understanding your calling is only the beginning. Rediscovering spiritual identity in a world that forgot. Many people born between 1955 and 1975 were never told who they really were, spiritually speaking. They were raised in a world that valued appearances, routine, and silence over intuition, divine insight, and spiritual gifts. So, they buried their true selves. But that doesn't mean it disappeared. It means your spiritual identity was just waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now, in this season of Awakening 2025, it's no accident that you're starting to remember what the world tried to make you forget. This remembering shows up in subtle, even surprising ways. You feel drawn to the Bible, or you keep hearing a prophetic message that resonates deep in your soul. Maybe you're seeing repeating numbers, having vivid dreams, or suddenly becoming more sensitive to other people's energy. These aren't random. They're spiritual messages, a signal that God is calling you to step into the fullness of who you are. You're not just someone who believes in God, you were chosen by God, and that identity comes with power and responsibility. You are part of a prophetic generation, but rediscovering who you are requires unlearning who you were told to be. That's where the transformation gets real. Some people around you might not understand your shift, and that's okay. Spiritual transformation rarely makes sense to those still asleep. But as your intuitive gifts begin to return, so does your clarity, your courage, and your direction. And soon, the question won't be, who am I? It will be, how can I fully live out God's purpose for my life? But before you get there, there's one more piece of the puzzle. Embracing your spiritual mission in divine timing. Now that you're awakening to who you really are, the next step is stepping into it. You weren't just called to know the truth, you were called to live it. And here's the thing about divine timing. It never feels convenient, but it's always perfect. The world is shifting, and the signs of the end times are becoming more visible to those who have eyes to see. If you're feeling the urgency lately, the sense that now is the time, you're not alone. Many in your generation are hearing the same call, but walking in your spiritual mission doesn't have to be dramatic. It starts with obedience in the small things, spending time in prayer, reading scripture with fresh eyes, journaling the messages God keeps placing in your heart. Maybe it means finally speaking up, leading others, or just being a steady presence when others are panicking. God's plan isn't always about massive platforms. It's often about quiet faithfulness. Still, don't be surprised if doors begin to open, people start asking you questions, or you begin to feel unusually aligned. Remember, spiritual gifts were given to you for such a time as this. You weren't born into this prophetic generation by chance. You were placed here by design. Lightworkers, intuitive people, and old souls like you carry something this world desperately needs right now: spiritual clarity, bold faith, and unshakable love. Your faith journey isn't over. It's finally beginning to make sense. And while the world may keep spinning in confusion, you're being invited to rise, to awaken, and to walk boldly in your life purpose. Because what's coming next will require everything you've been preparing for. So now you know, it wasn't just you, that feeling of being different, that lifelong restlessness. It was never a flaw. It was a sign, a prophetic message tucked deep within your spirit, waiting for the moment you'd finally hear it clearly. And now that you have, what will you do with it? Will you step fully into the spiritual mission you were born for? Will you stop shrinking to fit a world that was never meant to define you? Because the truth is, the world needs exactly what you've been trying to hide: your light, your gifts, your truth. You're not just part of the chosen generation. You're one of the ones who remembers. And that remembering comes with a responsibility. If any part of this hit home for you, if something stirred in your soul, then you already know this message wasn't random. Maybe God is calling you. Maybe you've always been chosen. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop asking why you feel different and start asking what you were made to do with it. So reflect on this, pray on it, journal it. And if you're ready to keep diving deeper into your spiritual identity, it might be worth hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Who knows? The next message might be the one that changes everything.